Hi folks, Slick Slices here. Now here is a very slick little knife that I want to show you today. This is quite a special knife. It's really quite an expensive knife, and it's only the entry level of this particular maker's knives. This is the Sting, and it's made by a chap called Bartosz Herman, who is a Polish knife maker, and they're sold through the Polish Custom Knives brand. PolishCustomKnives.com is the website address. And as I say, this is pretty much the entry level. The only thing that this one has over the very base model is it's blue anodized. They do just a plain grey version, and the first version I ever saw of this was the plain version that was sent to Nick Shabazz to review 2 or 3 years ago actually. Now this particular one, according to its birthday card, was made in September last year. This is quite new. It was sent as a review sample to Paddy's potato peelers over in Ireland, and it's done the rounds a bit, so this isn't a new knife by any means, and you have to bear that in mind because I've got one or two things to say about that. But you know, if it had just arrived brand new and it had some of the things that I will point out, because I'm going to be picky. I've got to be a bit picky about it because this knife costs in this format today £600 or thereabouts, shipped to the UK, including VAT. When Nick Shabazz first reviewed it, it was $540, which is 300 and something pounds. So that's nearly £400. But it's it's a substantial amount of money, and for that money, you are there is quite a lot of competition for your money for really high quality knives. You could, for example, have a Rockstead Heisen. Now you might not want a Rockstead Heisen, but it's in the same price range, and so I'm going to do a little bit of we'll compare a little bit to that, and give you some idea of it. But let's have a look at this first. So this is grade 5 titanium covers. I do like the way, I'll come back to that. You've got a milled titanium clip, all blue anodized as well. You'll see there are 2 screw heads here. Those are the only screw heads on it. You've got this proprietary thing here, I'll come to that, but you know, screw heads here, these are the ends of the screws, and the screws are all hidden under the clip except for these 2. They go right the way through the knife, and they're screwed into the outside here, and rather than like the Benchmade 940 does a similar thing. You've got these screws going through and they come out the other side, but on the Benchmade they're just blackened screws, so I mean, hopefully you can see those coming through. Whereas what Bartosz Herman has done is he has rounded them over and polished them, so they look really quite nice. They make a nice design detail, which reminds me of the West, for the quiet carry symbol. They have 4 little holes, well this is 3 little bumps, which is sort of similar sorts of vein. And it's a liner lock, and there's an internal liner screwed in here. Well, it's Nick Shabazz called it an internal frame lock. It is a liner lock. You've got I think a steel, it could be titanium, but I think inside here, bar, which is held by 2 screws coming from the inside out down here. they hold the liner in. So as I say, you've got these two screws holding on the clip, but they're the only two screw heads. You've got a nice flat and polished retained captive pivot screw here, nicely done again inside. I'm not going to take this to bits for, well, I'll come to why you don't take it to bits in a minute, but if you do, that part of it is done very well. On this side you do have one screw, and it says a proprietary tooling, and the tool comes with it. Now, Nick Shabazz said it was like being kicked in the crotch and then being offered an ice pack. Might be better if you just didn't kick him in the crotch in the first place. Well, I get that, but I actually like that tooling. I think it looks good. Now, Greg Bedford has proprietary tooling, which again looks quite good actually. The 6-shot screw head, but he tells you not to take it to bits, and that's why he has proprietary tooling. Bartosz Herman says no, this is a bearing knife that will need cleaned, will need taken to bits and cleaned and re-oiled, so he sends you the tool to do it. And I just think, well, I'd rather have that than have a crass big T20 Torx bit, which is what he does subsequent to Nick Shabazz's intervention on it. Outside also we've got this lovely fluting, which is it's one of these things that as you turn it, it seems to move and change colour. The first knife I ever had that was like that was the Kaiser Zip Slip in titanium, which I really liked. But the funny thing is that this knife, although it seemed really, really smart when I got it, it looks relatively crude when you compare it to the likes of this, and indeed the Rockstead, which that it looks like sand, rippled sand in a Japanese garden, or at least it does to me. This one again is very, very nicely done, beautifully done on both sides and also on the clip. Now, if there's one thing I really like about this knife, and see if I can do this in one take, it's the only knife I have that flicks that well, that reliably, that solidly. I have a couple of other flippers, but nothing that works so well. I mean, I have this Fox Suru, which I haven't done a video on yet, but I will do. I have to give it a bit of wrist. If I don't, without wrist, so I'll just rest my hand there, that doesn't open. And the only way I can get it to go is to give that bit of wrist. Then it works. And that's fine, you know, I can live with that. I've tried adjusting the pivot, nothing makes any difference. But this also, I should also point out that it drops shut. This, every time. And you can do it as lazily as you like. It's very hard to get it to fail. I just try and do that. I see if I can get it to fail. No, see, just doesn't. I do have another blue titanium anodized knife, but again, it's in the it's a budget knife. This is a Fura Gear Quaken. I mean, it's quite a nice little knife in its way, but it's action. It's got a great action. Again, it's a ball bearing flipper, and it has a very thick and heavy blade, and that is part of the key to this. this blade is a very it's a very slicey, thin-edged blade, but it's actually quite large, quite thick stock. It's 3.6mm stock. So, but it's quite, because it's quite broad, it comes down to a very thin edge, and there's quite a bit of distal taper in it, so it's got to be sort of pointy edge to it as well. When it comes to the liner lock, it locks up nicely, but it's also, you've got some good access to the liner lock, and as I, oops, it gets caught in the cloth there, it drops shut nice. So I don't think this one's ever been taken to bits. Paddy told me he'd just put a bit of oil in it, and that's all. Whilst I see that, it reminds me, I should tell you, it's M390 steel. Can't really argue with that. It's chemically very similar to 20CV. It seems to hold its edge pretty well. Paddy did a video of him cutting up bits of carpet with it, and it sliced through far better than his Medford had ever done. But I suspect that's a lot to do with edge geometry, because this is a relatively thin, slicey blade. Although his is the slim midi, his Medford was the slim midi, so it's a similar sort of size, but it's a sabre grind. So the thickness of the blade is held to more than halfway down the blade, and then you've a relatively steep hollow grind. This is flat ground from the top in a sort of stone washed finish, which, considering the amount of abuse it's had from Paddy and it's passed on from him, there's nothing showing on that blade, nothing at all. It's beautiful. On this side, I should point out, it's got the Herman's brand signature. So action's brilliant. Take apart is interesting. You've got obviously the proprietary pivot, and you've this floating back spacer, which is very nice, held in by 3 screws. Now, when Nick Shabazz took one to bits, there were 6 little washers in there. Now bear in mind, 3 of those screws, 2 of the screws go all the way through and are hidden by the clip, and the final screw is actually the final screw of the clip. So it's slightly cack-handed to try and put it all back together, because you can't just lay it down with the screws in it and then put 6 washers on, back spacer on, 6 washers on the other side, because you can't do those 2 screws up if you've put that screw in, because you've got the clip in the way. So that just all became a little bit awkward. But, you know, he got it back together eventually. I have no intention of taking this apart. If I manage to ruin my bailout by just swapping the clip over and manage to take a gouge out of it, I'm certainly not going to be taking this one to bits. Now, under this machine clip, you've got a recessed area, and it's smooth. There's no milling, and that makes it relatively easy in and out of the pocket. And then inside, I don't know whether you can see it or not. I'll move it about and see, you never know. There's quite a lot of relief work has gone on both sides. You can see the retention bar. Turn that over. You can see it from that side too, but actually you can see it better from the back. You can see this is just a separate. It's not a liner lock in the traditional sense, and it's part of the liner, because there isn't really a liner. It's just a lock bar. That's all. It's its sole purpose in life. Now, I quite like this knife, but I have one major criticism of it, and that is that this anodizing has worn really quite badly, and it's becoming a bit patchy too. I don't know if I can get I don't know if you'll be able to see that on the camera, but it's become a bit patchy around here. It's faded a lot here, and obviously it's worn at the edges. particularly on that end. You can, I don't know if it comes into focus or not, but it's worn quite a bit. And I've one other criticism of it, and I don't know if you'll get this, or maybe I'm just being picky, but I don't like the sound of it. Other people tell me that that's a lovely sound, but I think that sounds cheap. As Dolly Parton once said, it costs a lot of money to look this cheap. Well, there we are. If I compare that to the action of Rockstead, now Rocksteads, they, unfortunately, for a lefty, they're quite difficult to demonstrate. But the action on that is so smooth and creamy and velvety and all those sorts of words. It's just hard to get that over. But it just has a higher quality sound to it. And I talked over that. I'll just do that again. It just sounds to me higher quality. Now, that being said, Rockstead, you're getting this Rockstead for the same money as that Herman, and obviously you can see that this Rockstead is quite a lot smaller. This is the same size as a small Sebenza. They're pretty much identical in size and blade shape and blade size and so forth, handle size. But this is aluminium. Well, it's duralinium rather than aluminium, but it's basically an aluminium handled knife, which is, I suppose, more comparable with the 940 in terms of materials. Oops, I'm going a bit off the screen there, aren't I? Move this down a bit. Aluminium, titanium. If you want to go to titanium with Rockstead, you've got to jump up the price quite a bit. And now this is, just get these in order. This is obviously bigger than the Herman, and there's more of everything about this knife than the Herman. It's the blade stock is of similar width, but because this is a convex grind, it's there's just more of it. There's no weight relief in the handle, so this tends to be relatively heavy as a knife. But I think there's a lot to be said for these in terms of the quality that you get. And I'm not quite sure you're getting the same with the Herman. It certainly looks pretty. There's no getting away from that. But I'm just not sold on that, on the way it sounds. And I know that might seem a really odd thing to worry about. Oops, I managed to get it to fail. There we are. Actually, it's because it caught on the meat of my thumb there. Now, people can flick these open, I can't, but that's just, I don't have the fast twitch movement in my thumb. But listen, that's a really nice, solid lock up. Whereas that Katunk just doesn't have the same thing about it. And there's nothing smoother than a Rockstead. Nothing. They talk about the glassy smoothness of a Sebenza, but honestly, one thing I do like about the Sebenza, of course, is that they make them in left-handed, so you can actually get the proper feel of a frame lock that as a lefty you just don't get normally. Don't get it with the Rocksteads, but that's got a good solid sounding lock to it. There's no sort of twang in that. And I say with the Rockstead, because I'm left-handed, it's just that little bit extra awkward in terms of, well, you've got that lovely thunk, but in terms of the droppiness, it does drop beautifully, but you have to be a bit cat-handed about it, and it drops onto my thumbnail, and I'm glad it drops onto my thumbnail because that knife is unbelievably sharp. And that arrived sharp, of course. I believe this arrived sharp, I don't know. These were mediocre at best. Anyway, we're talking about the Herman here today, and I've gone on about everything else. It is a very nice knife. I do like it quite a lot. It's quite well presented. Is it worth the money? Well, everybody else seems to think so. So who am I to argue? But I personally think if I was spending £600, I'd probably be more likely to try and get the Rockstead. You know, this is M390, which is great, but this one is 67 Rockweld ZDP 189 with a titanium nitride coating on it. This is over a year old. It's been very well used, and it's not taken a single scratch despite the fact it's been used, because that titanium nitride coating is very hard. It's got a bit of smear on it, but it's not a scratch. There is a small scratch on it just here, and I have no idea if I can pick that up on the camera or not. See how shiny it is? It's got the best mirror polish ever, but there is a small scratch down towards the tip on the lower bevel. Right then, folks, I think that's enough of this. It was only supposed to be a little introductory to this because I haven't really had a chance to use it or anything yet, but we're over 20 minutes, and even with a bit of editing, it's still going to probably end up around about 20-minute mark, so I'll see how much I can cut out of it and still have it make sense. This is, I say, the Herman Sting sent by Polish Custom Knives, and yeah, it's very nice. I like it. It's nice to carry, yeah, there we are. I will be doing at least another one video on it. We'll see how things go. But anyway, if you like this stuff, thumbs up. If you don't, if you don't, thumbs down. But if you want to see more of it, sucker for punishment, then please subscribe and remember to ring the bell if you want notifications. Thank you.